Hi my friends, in today's video we are going to make this huge bowl in chestnut oak, and in the bottom we are going to make 3 little legs so it will have a better support. Hi my friends, how are you? I hope everybody's fine. My name is Daniel Vilarino. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you remember from the last video, we reshape the profile of this large ball gouge, and in that video I promised you that we were going to turn a big bowl. And I have this blank. It's a piece of chestnut oak that was sick and they fell down several years ago here in the neighborhood. I got several pieces of this and I put paraffin on it to let it dry, and it has been there for almost 4 years. Although I had it for a long time, as you can see in these pictures, the humidity is still high. It changes from 12% to almost 20%, and that is on the exterior. If we begin to deepen when we are emptying the inside of the bowl, probably inside is going to be even higher. So we should treat this as a green piece of wood, and we have 2 options. The first one is to do a rough turning, a pre-turning in a way, and then pack it in a bag with the shavings and let it dry for maybe 1 more year. The second option is to just do a one-time turning and let nature to take its course and see how after it is turned the shape changes. And that has its appeal as well. Now, if we do a base, a regular base like a circular one, with time it may happen that because of the change of the shape of the tree, it may not be stable when it is on the table. So I am going to do a one-time turning and I will put 3 legs on the base. And as you know, 3 points define a plane, so it is always going to be well seated on the table. So it has some cracks, as you can see in these pictures, and those cracks are pretty close to the bark side, so that limits the options. We cannot do a live edge on this one because probably we will have to reduce the size a lot if we do it that way. So we are going to try to make a 3-leg bowl and use this part as the mouth, trying to maximize the size of the bowl. The measurements vary in the diameter. I just rough cut it with a chainsaw between 16.5 and 18 inches in diameter, and the depth is between 8 and 9 inches, a little more, 9 3/4. So once we remove the bark, probably it's going to be a little less, but I think still we can get a pretty nice size bowl. So that's today's project. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get to work. When the size of the blank is reasonable, balancing the piece between centers is a good way to get a higher speed of rotation, reducing the vibration. Please check the video link that appears on the top right corner of the screen. But this blank is way too heavy and it will be really difficult to do that. Besides, I want to maximize the diameter of the final piece, so I will try to find a geometric center. To do this, I trace a line, more or less in the center. I look for its middle point, and through that one I trace a perpendicular line. Over that perpendicular line, I put the ruler and measure the distance from edge to edge. Look for the middle point and mark it. That is a possible center of this irregular shape. I will repeat the process in another direction. Both points are pretty close. I trace a small circle between both, and that will be the place I will consider as the center of this face. I turn the blank upside down. I I measure the middle point in the top part of the curvature, since it is easy to put the ruler flat over there. I rotate the piece 90 degrees and press one of the sides firmly against the wall of the headstock housing. On the other side, I use a square as a reference. I use the measuring tape to measure the distance. The funny thing was that the two marks intersected just in the small hole left by a nail that held the circular template I used to do the cuts with the chainsaw. I put the flat face of the blank over the drill press table. In the mandrel I have a 2 inches and 1/8 Forstner bit. To perforate a surface that it is out of level and so irregular like this bark with a large bit is not safe if the piece is loose, so I use a couple of large clamps to secure well the blank. Let's always use eye, face, lungs and hearing protection. I want to go through all the bark until I reach the sapwood. This is a pretty coarse bark, so I will try to remove all the peaks with a chisel. I'm going to make a shallow hole on the other side. I turn it upside down and I place some wedges so it will not dance around. And I try to level the perforation side. Through trial and error I found a couple of boards that allowed me to raise the blank close to the position of the spur and live centers. With a blank so big and heavy, any possible help is always welcome. I place the tool rest so it will not obstruct the blank rotation. There is a part of the blank that is wider and makes the piece unbalanced, so I will attack that sector first, before anything else, to later increase the turning speed. I make sure that the speed regulator is really low. I help the blank to start its rotation and I turn on the lathe. I will begin to increase the speed slowly and I will observe both the lathe and the blank behaviors. I will increase it until a reasonable speed, checking there is no vibration. Probably, since the robust is so heavy and stable, I could increase it even more, but 340 RPMs to start, and for this large diameter, is okay for the moment. I begin doing some push cuts. The gouge is barely overhanging the tool rest. The flute is inclined about 45 degrees and the handle is inclined towards the floor at about 30 degrees and well tacked against my body to have more stability and a more secure grip. After these first cuts, you can see that I am cutting just a small sector of the bark, as expected. The situation will improve as I keep deepening and removing material. At the start, I will keep adjusting the tool rest position often, making sure the gouge overhangs just a little, since the blank is still very irregular. I will increase the rotation speed a little, up to 480 RPMs, and as we will hear, the cut sound is a little more continuous and the gouge will not jump that much. We are cutting now in two sectors and that helps stabilizing the cut, but the step is big on one side, so I will reaccommodate the tool rest and spend some time on getting rid of that step. Going back to a pretty uneven area, the jumping has resumed a little. At the start, the progress is always a little slow. Here you can see better the position of the gouge with respect to my body. I am using now a combination of cuts. I initiate the cut as a push cut, but after I got deep enough, I begin to pull the gouge, converting it into a pull cut over the area where the surface is more even. As you will see, the big diameter of this particular gouge will allow me to remove a large amount of material. Since the piece has a little more balance, I increase the speed a little more, this time to slightly above 600 RPMs. With this take, you can see better the pull cut. I make contact with the heel of the bevel and then rotate the shaft until I get some shavings. Then I pull from the handle so the sharp edge executes the cut. I have been cutting for a while now, and also the bark tends to wear faster the sharp edge, so let's give it a touch up in the grinder. I measure the 2 1/4 inches, make sure the guillotine is in the notch number 2 and the swivel head is forward to the position B. I begin from one wing and sharpen towards the center, and then I repeat from the other side. "16 seconds of sharpening and we are back to the lathe. Finally, I have achieved enough space so that I can begin doing some push cuts and removing more material. Also, I can work now on the side with push cuts. Trying to balance the piece a little more, I have moved the tool rest between the blank and the headstock to flatten some the part where later will be the mouth of the ball. As you can see, I keep holding the gouge handle against my body for better leverage. With these pull cuts, it's important to maintain bevel contact against the wood surface, try to avoid cuts that are too deep, and avoid the gouge overhanging too much the tool rest. If these three conditions are not respected, the cutting edge can sink deep into the wood, producing a nasty catch. As you can appreciate in the step left by this push cut, once the blank is true up and balanced and the surface is even, we can go deeper with the push cuts without having any jumping in the gouge. In the caliper, I had the measure of the external diameter of the biggest chuck jaws that I have in a position almost fully closed. I made a circumference and ended up being too big. So I made another one a little smaller and that was perfect. So I will use it as a reference to make a provisional mortise. The tailstock hinders a little the work because it is too close to the area I am cutting. With the parting tool I make most of the mortise. Then I will get the tool rest closer and a little higher to use the skew chisel to slant the internal wall to get a better grip with the dovetail shape of the jaws. Taking into consideration the direction of the grain, I remove the little knob with a bench chisel. I verify that the sharp edge is pretty close to the height of the lathe turning axis. For the moment, I am just evening the surface of the bowl's mouth. In part because I turn it around and in part because it is still green and is changing shape, I will do some pull cuts to true it up. I will do a couple of cuts in the bottom part to check how deep the cracks run. They seem to be running pretty deep. I do not want to remove that much material, and still they may not disappear, so I decided that I will fill them up when the time comes. I raise the tool rest almost up to the middle of the bowl. In the divider I have the external measure of the chuck jaws almost completely closed. Very important, the point that touches the wood is the left, the one in the right can never touch it and it is there just for reference. I made a small groove and the right point ended up being outside of it, so I moved the left point half the difference to the outside and I try again, until the right point will point to the circumference. And then, finally, I can deepen the groove a little more, always with the left point of the divider. I move away the tool rest a little so that the parting tool will get supported on the flat edge and not on the bevel, and I begin to form the mortise. The reason I want to do a mortise in the mouth is because I want to turn the piece around once more to work safely on the bottom and to make there a better mortise. I use a skew chisel to incline the wall of the mortise. I will remove some material simply to make it a bit lighter. Now that the blank is well balanced, I am going to switch to a smaller diameter ball gouge, because it is easier to maneuver and it is lighter. I am going to flatten well the base that I have formed. Now, finally, I make the definitive mortise in the base. With a well-sharpened scraper, I deepen a little the central part, about 3/16 of an inch deeper than the external part, because this external part is the one that will be the base for the 3 support legs. I take the external part of the bowl closer to its final form. I am using a freshly sharpened scraper to remove tool marks. Please observe that the scraper burr, because it is just sharpened, generates shavings rather than dust. Okay, before I begin the sanding, I need to address those deep checks. The first step will be to put some low viscosity CA glue in the cracks, so it will penetrate the wood and harden it. Then I will try to fill the checks with coffee grinds that I will keep wetting with the same CA glue. Once satisfied with the filling, I will remount the bowl and begin the sanding, but if I note that there are little pores, I will apply more coffee and CA glue until I get a very even filling. As always, I will begin with a coarser grit sandpaper and I will work with that the longest time. In this case it is 80 grit. And from there 120, 150, 220, 320, 400 and 600. Then I will apply my homemade abrasive paste and friction polish. With the exception of the big size and the larger shavings production, emptying the inside of the bowl is very similar to many other bowls I have made. Unfortunately, I did not realize that 2 of the cameras had the batteries out of use, and the one that was directly connected to the outlet lost the focus more often than not. So I will try to show some sequences of the progress without dwelling on them too much. As it is pretty good practice, I will work by sectors, more so in this case where the wood is still pretty wet and will tend to reshape. I will cut, check thickness, correct, check again, and so on until a sector is finished, and just then go to work to the next sector. When I'm turning a bowl, I like to set the grinder with a wheel for the gouge and another wheel for a scraper. The wheel will leave a burr in this heavy scraper that, more than scrape, it will cut the wood. Since the sharpening is so quick, I can return to the wood turning really fast. You can see the nice shavings obtained by a scraper just sharpened. For the bottom of the bowl, one could use also a gouge, but in this case I would have to deal with the checks anyway, so I decided to use the scraper. And a well sharpened one works almost as well as a gouge. I made the same process of filling with coffee grinds and CA glue in the inside, and from there I will repeat the same sanding steps done before, but just up to 320 grit. This time I decided to seal the grain in the internal wall. I will use shellac. I will apply a thin layer using a clean cloth. After covering the whole surface, I will let it dry for 40 minutes. Then I will sand with 320 grit until I reach the wood. It is important to change the sandpaper often because it will get clogged with the shellac. Then I will repeat this process once more. For this second time, I will use finer and finer grits and I will get up to 800. Here I am already applying the abrasive paste. And here the friction polish. Because the ball has been changing its shape during the drying and due to its big size that change is even more noticeable, I am doing a vigorous rubbing by hand to reach any spots where I may not have reached during the rubbing while rotating the piece. I have marked well the center of the base and with a lot of patience I will make the perforation to hold my logo coin. With a ruler and a protractor, I will mark 3 lines equally spaced at 120 degrees where I will form the little legs of the bowl. Okay, the next day the ball has shifted considerably. The arrows show a separation towards the sides, while in the middle it is against the table. The diameter along the grain is 16 inches and 3/8, about 41.6 centimeters, while in the perpendicular diameter it is of 15 inches and 1/4, around 38.7 centimeters. And you can see that the base does not sit flat against the table. This was all anticipated, and for that reason was the decision I took from the beginning of making 3 little legs in the base. To work comfortably and so the piece is held firmly, I will place a couple of boards on the board table and secure them well with some clamps. Also, I will place a towel over the table and the borders to avoid denting the ball and its finish. With a box knife I will score well the sides of each little leg, and I promise in future jobs I will be more careful with these box knives. Using the scorings I did with the box knife and with a small hacksaw, and very carefully, I will cut the sides of the legs. The internal side of the ring is shallower than the external part, so I will try to cut to the depth of the internal side, perhaps even a hair shy. Being careful to respect the cuts I just did, with the mallet I prepared in the previous video and with a small chisel I will begin to chip away the excess. I am cutting for the moment in the direction of the grain. I am not an expert carver and I am not sure if this can be done in a different way, but I decided to do it this way and it will take some manual work to get it done. As I get closer to the other leg and the cut I did with a hacksaw, I had to be very careful and deliberate with the hits that I make. Lower their intensity since I do not want to damage the wall of the other little leg. Since the cuts with the hacksaw did not reach the bottom, very carefully and with measure, I used the chisel cutting edge to deepen them up to the point it is needed. Once all the chiseling is done, I will use a combination of power sanding with the drill and rotative pads and hand sanding to even up all the surfaces. I will sand through the grits. Once I finish all the sanding, I will protect the coin with duct tape and cut it around to remove the excess. I will finish the bottom with the polishing wheels and they get black because of the bronze in the coin. I load the wheel with carnauba wax and holding the board firmly and carefully I polish it to give it a nice finish. Okay, my friends, here you have it, this huge bowl made in chestnut oak, and as you can see, it has a very nice size. I will have to consider in the future to get a coring system. I had to make a lot of shavings in order to make this one, so to make a better use of the blocks of wood that I get, perhaps a coring system will help. And also you can see in the bowl the cracks on the bottom. You can see them here and here that I had to fill with coffee grinds, and you can see them also in the inside, beautiful good. And also you can see in the back the little legs, the 3 legs that I made in order to have a better support for the bowl. If you take a look at the border, at the rim, you can see that it already had some deformation. The wood was a little wet still, even though it has been there in the workshop for many years, but it had a high humidity, and part of the plan was that it was going to deform with time, and it happened faster than I thought. And the dimensions in this direction along the grain is larger than in this direction, like this, but that was part of the plan, as I said, and that's the reason why I made the little legs. Otherwise, if it had had a circumference in the bottom, it would have had a wobbling when sitting on the table. This way it has a firm seat on the table and it works pretty well. And the change in shape was in part what the nature wanted, and it gives the piece a certain character. So I am very happy with the result. Before I leave, I want to thank Juan Lu from Seville in Spain. He sent me by mail a chasca, a clicker, and you can see it here, and here you can see the one I made in the video. Let me see, there, both work pretty well, but the one he sent me is substantially larger than I thought it was going to be. When I did this one, I didn't realize too much about the dimensions that it could have, so in the future, if I do another one, I may use this as a model. Juan Lu, thank you so much, and please give my regards to your family in Seville, Spain. And to all of you, I hope you enjoyed the video. If that's the case, please don't forget to mark the like button below, make comments. If you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, there appears the button to facilitate the subscription. And it will be until the next one. Cheers!